So here I am in the Roedde House girls' room. I'm going to close off today's special by talking a little bit about how people learned how to cook in the first place. I should really say how women learned how to cook in the first place. Now, a lot of toys in the Victorian era were not just to have fun with. They were like little miniature tools to train you on how to be a proper adult. Things like this really cute little enamel tea set, this tiny little teapot. I honestly would have loved having one of these as a kid. Look at these tiny little teacups, they're so dear. We have another little china set over here, which I'm not going to touch because it looks fragile. We also have some perfect little replicas of tools that adults would have been using, like this little child-size egg beater, which is a near perfect copy of the one we have downstairs in the kitchen. There it goes, it even turns the same way. There's also a collection of cookbooks here because in the Victorian era, girls on average were learning how to cook from their mothers, but because the Victorians were so obsessed with institutionalizing and categorizing and compartmentalizing things, we start to see a lot of cooking schools or cooking instructions cropping up. Some of the female cookbook writers who I talked about earlier gained notoriety as cooking teachers. I've got here this little textbook. It's called Basic Principles of Domestic Science that a young girl might have used at school to learn how to cook, in addition to anything that she was doing at home with her mother. This one's lovely. It's got some information on nutrition, like sort of more on the scientific side of cooking, as well as a large collection of recipes. So it's a bit more kind of nitty-gritty than some of the cookbooks we looked at earlier. It also has, this is one of my favorite books in our collection because if you can come in a little closer, some intrepid young aspiring home artist has written recipes into some of the blank pages, and she's also cut out newspaper clippings or magazine cutouts and filled, look at this, she's even glued over some existing pages, maybe some pages she didn't like. She's got some, like, this looks like an advert for like a brand of sausage and it comes with a recipe. She decided that she liked it and she glued it in, but it unfolds like that. She also, if we go back a few pages, she has written down a recipe and then crossed it out. I don't know if she decided she didn't like the recipe or maybe a younger sibling got their hands on the book and was trying to get on her nerves, but anyway, I think it's a really nice humanizing touch. You know, the Victorians were people too, and things like this are a really important reminder of that. If we go back, there are also, we talked a little bit earlier about advertising or food companies who published cookbooks. Another major source of recipes in households at this time was through magazines. Now, both children and adults had magazines. The Victorians loved magazines. This one here is an anthology. It's the Girls' Own Annual here, which is a very popular magazine. There's also a Boys' Own Annual, but because the gender divide is a thing, it probably wouldn't have included recipes. This is like an anthology of several different issues of the magazine all bound together, and it's quite weighty. You could have spent a very long time poring over this in the days before internet. It has some features including a week's menus for July, and I thought it would be fun to look up what we might be eating today if this was the Victorian era. Wednesday suggests that for dinner we make a cream of cauliflower soup with croutons, plaice, which is a type of fish, au gratin. Au gratin is a French cooking technique where you take your main ingredient, so in this case fish, and then you layer it with cream and breadcrumbs and cheese and bake it in the oven. It's delicious. Then it recommends stewed veal with mushrooms, which frankly seems a little bit hearty for a July day. Then some stuffed marrow and creamed potatoes on the side. And then for dinner, a cute little old-fashioned, quite Canadian dessert, snow eggs, which if any of you speak French, you might know as œufs à la neige. So that is the suggested menu for a young girl to probably make with some assistance for dinner in July. Then one final thing I'd like to show you. We've talked a little bit about teaching, but I found this little sort of gem at the back of one of my cookbooks in the collection, which I thought was quite cute, and I wanted to close it off with you today with you. This Good Housekeeping book, again a cookbook / household management book that was published by a magazine, has a large section at the back here where readers of the magazine could send in their tips and have them published in a book. And one woman from Massachusetts gives her sort of fellow magazine fans some tips on child training in cookery. She says here that her 14-year-old son and her 11-year-old daughter have been recruited helping her with making pastry on baking day. And I think it's really sweet how she talks about how important it is to have them learn how to cook, including teaching her son at least a few basics of cookery, which is quite unusual for the time and I think is really quite charming. So there you have it. That is your little introduction to baking and cookbooks in the Victorian era.